Okay, so good morning. Today is Daf Gimel in Nazir, our second Daf in Nazir, and we are near on the two dots at the bottom of Bedam and Bed, about 7 lines up, and 6 lines up. And so in the Mishnah that opened Masechet Nazir, we reference 2 examples of Yadot, shorthand. And again, just as we saw by Nidarim, a Nazir, the vow to become a Nazir is a type of Neder. And just as you can have shorthand, where you say just 1 or 2 words, you don't say a full sentence, even 1 word, hey, is sufficient in particular circumstances for people to understand what you're talking about. And if it's clear what you're talking about, so then your words have meaning and they can result in one becoming a Nazir. And so we referenced 2 examples of that yesterday. One was just a hey, I'm gonna be, I shall be. And we discussed this yesterday and explained that the person who says this will become a Nazir if a Nazir walked in front of the person speaking. So it seems like the person is saying, I want to be a Nazir like this person. And 2, when the person, when you ask the person, what was your intention? They say, yeah, and that was my intention. So if you say, hey, with a Nazir in front of you, and so we all think that that's what you mean, and you tell us that that's what you mean, well, then we're going to assume that that's what you meant and that you will be a Nazir. What about if I say, hey, na'eh? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to begin with that. And so that is exactly what we're going to start with. It says at the 2 dots, right? 7 lines up. It says, hey, na'eh, Nazir, right? So that's that person who says that I'm going to be handsome, that I shall be handsome. So that's, what they're saying is that they are going to be a Nazir, and they're referring to the beauty of the hair. But Dilma anoel lefanav b'mitzvos. So the Gemara wonders, well, maybe the guy's saying that I want to be, beautiful or create beauty in front of God with mitzvot, as we have it in the following brisa, Kedatanya Zeh Keli v'Anvehu, in the pasuk that we'll have in next week's Torah portion in connection with the Az Yashir, we say Zeh Keli v'Anvehu. And so Noah lefanav b'mitzvos, and that what that means is the anvehu is that I'm going to beautify God, is beautify myself in front of God, is what it really means with mitzvot. And how does that? What are the examples of that? So lefanav sukkah, I'm going to make in front of God a beautiful sukkah. Lulavna, I'm going to take a beautiful lulav. Tzitzitna, I'm going to make sure that my tzitzis are nice. Echdov lefanav sefer Torah, I'm going to write in front of God a beautiful Torah scroll. Echrachenu b'shira'in na'im, and then when I take that Torah scroll and I cover it, I'm going to use beautiful wraps for it. So all of that is the intention. So how do I know that? So all of those are different ways that we can beautify ourselves before God through our mitzvot. So maybe that's what the person is saying. I want to beautify myself before God through the performance of various mitzvot. So Amar Shmuel should tafas b'saro. No, you have to understand the example that we're talking about. The person isn't just even in front of them. It's not like there's just a Nazir in front of the person where you don't know what aspect of that person the person might be referring to, but rather the guy is actually holding the beautiful long hair of a Nazir and saying, I'm going to beautify myself through this mitzvah of not letting my hair grow. So v'amar, and so I'm going to be handsome in order like this person through the lengthening of my hair. So if we take a look at the rush on the bottom right-hand side of the page, it's the second of the widest lines at the very end of the line, where it says Amar Shmuel Shetafas B'Saro. right? So the person grabs onto the guy's hair, and that's what we're talking about. Abal Nazir over lefanav lo mahani. But it's not enough for the Nazir to just be in front of the person. Eladavga kisha omer ahei. That will only work when the person says, hey, I want to be like that, right? Because the ikalisafuke open Nazir, obatinis, right? Because we said when the person says, I will be, I shall be. So it wasn't clear. Is the person saying, I shall be a faster or I shall be a Nazir? So when there are those two key options, so then when the person is in front of you, so then the implication is that you want to be a Nazir. Demashma yehe gufi mit'aneh o Nazir, right? That there's something internal to me, and those are the main two choices. So if I have something that indicates which of the ones I want to be, namely there's a Nazir in front of me, and of course I also have to say that I want to be a Nazir, the kaven de Nazir over lefanav muchach shehu rotze shehi gufo kamo. So when the person is passing in front, so then that's sufficient. About but when the person says that I shall be beautiful, so the ika sheyoma the ika l'sefuke b'lashon na'eh, where we have an uncertainty with respect to the language of beauty. Im lehit na'ot b'sa'aro, does it mean ulagadlo? Kedin Nazir, does it mean that the person is intending to grow his hair and make it beautiful like a Nazir? Kamar, lehit na'ot b'mitzvah, or to make it beautify himself with a mitzvah. And ein hochacha b'masha Nazir over lefanav. Kevan de'ena safek ela b'lashon na'eh. So just having the Nazir go in front of the guy, that's not enough, because the uncertainty that we have is not about the ahei, it's about the na'eh. What type of beauty is it talking about? Because all that tells us is that the beauty could be the beauty of the Nazir, that there's a Nazir in front of the guy. But it could also be many other kinds of beauty. And so, aval b'masha tafas b'saro. Well, but then when you're grabbing the person's hair, ika hochacha, that's going to be a sufficient proof that he's saying that he wants to make his hair beautiful, just like the Nazir. The low boy sheyomer belibo haya dehochacha gemura habi. That in this, I'm so glad to hear that, Mark. So okay, thank you so much for letting me know. There's some more downstairs. Okay, I appreciate that. So all right, so we're talking right now about somebody who says that I want to be beautiful, and the person was grabbing the hair of a Nazir. And so when the person grabs the hair of the Nazir, and then it's clear that the way he wants to be beautiful is not by doing good deeds and doing them in a beautiful way, but rather he wants to be a Nazir and have his hair grow. And in that situation, we say that you do not need the additional proof of what is in the person's heart, because the hochacha gemura havi masha tafas b'saro, because the fact that the guy is grabbing the hair, that is going to be a sufficient proof. About ain tafas b'saro, but if the person was not grabbing the hair, afilu yomer belibi haya belibi haya, even if the person says that it was my heart's intent to become a Nazir, lo mahani, that is not enough. Delo mikre piv velibo shavin, because on some level you need to have a consistency between your heart and your mouth. And kaven deleka hochacha klal, because we don't have any proof whatsoever. So what we've done here, what the Rush has done, is create a couple of different categories. When we have a clear action and a semi-clear statement that fits together, that is going to be sufficient for to become a Nazir. If we have a semi-clear statement and a semi-clear action, well, then we need also the statement that I had the intention in my heart. And if we have something where it's a totally unclear statement, then nothing you could say about your heart is going to make the difference, because we need to have at least some degree of consistency between the two. So hopefully that's clear, and we are ready to now ask the question that that may be on your minds based on the beginning of Maseches Nedarim, because Nazira Milsa Da'avera. How could we even think to say that the person intends to become a Nazir? Isn't becoming a Nazir something that we call sinful? The Amrinan Le'na'ah. And now
Before you go on, could I jump in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I looked at the Yerushalmi last night, and they seem to be more, well, there are a lot of Gearsod issues and the language isn't all clear, but they seem to be willing to make someone a Nazir based only on either situation, even when it's not exactly clear. So the Yerushalmi is kind of like more like Nadarim. If you said something that's similar to making a Nazir, you're stuck, which is a little different.
Interesting. I was not aware of that. I have not yet learned Nazir Yerushalmi, and so
I tried last night. I'm not sure I'm going to continue that there are huge Gearsod problems, and the commentaries are try to resolve them. But it was interesting that they take a different they take a different they seem to take a different path. I don't think we poskin like the Yerushalmi here.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, that would certainly make sense that we would not. It certainly seems like that we need to that at least in the halacha from our perspective is that you actually in the hey na'eh case, you have to be holding the person's hair in order to be considered a Nazir.
Yeah, Yerushalmi doesn't seem to hold that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that it seems pretty clear that that's the way we poskin based on the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah's location, but I have not gone through that in detail. So, but the key is now we're going to ask the key that we're now changing. You know, the move that the Gemara is now making is saying, how could we even ever consider to be a reference to Nazirut, because isn't being a Nazir something that is inappropriate? And we see this in in a statement that we're going to state by Rabbi Elazar, but we're going to qualify it at the same time. So can we say that being a Nazir is something that is beautiful? So yes, as we turn to the top of Gimel Amud Aleph, the Afilu Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, the Amar Nazir Chota, right? So what was the opinion that said that a Nazir is not doing the right thing? That was Elazar HaKapar. And so Hani Mili Gabi Nazir Tameh, that his comment was with respect to a Nazir who becomes Tameh, because the Aidi Devoy Mitzstar, because he's got his whole thing gets canceled. His whole period that he had been a Nazir prior to his becoming Tameh gets canceled. And so as a result, he has to do it all over again. To Amar Rachman, because the Torah says, V'hayamim harishonim yipulu ki Tameh nizro. His first days will fall away. And so as a result, he loses them because he was a Nazir that became Tameh. So as a result, that's the situation. And Hasamhu, and it's only there that we're going to call the person a sinner. Dilma ase me'avar al nazirusei, because maybe he'll come to violate his nazirus, because he had intended to be a Nazir for 30 days, and then he became Tameh on day 28. And so now, instead of being a Nazir for 30 days, he's going to have to be a Nazir for 58 days. And maybe he won't be able to handle it. And so as a result, he might actually violate. And even just the possibility of that, the fact that he might come to violate it, means from Rabbi Elazar's perspective that he's effectively like a sinner. So Aval Nazir Tahor. If, however, the person is sufficiently careful that he's always Tahor, well then Lav Chotet Karabe, he doesn't have to be considered a sinner. Now Tosfos on Bezam Bet at the bottom asks an interesting question that I thought is worth going through. So we won't go through the entire Tosfos, but we'll take a look at from the question point on. So if we take a look at the second to last Tosfos on Bet and Bet, it says V'amai na'eha Abamai na'eh, ha milsa da'averahu. Okay, and so how can we call this person na'eh when we say that there's an avera here, and we call it an avera v'kasha? If we take a look 2 lines down from that heading, it says in the middle of the line v'kasha. There's a difficulty. There's a question that the Tosfos has. Deba'alma aisi l'Rabbi Lazar afilu an Nazir tahor. In the end, we end up saying that Rabbi Lazar says that even with respect to a tahor Nazir, we call the person a sinner. Why? Al Shem should seer es atzmo min hayayin, because he's refraining himself from wine. And when you commit to not have some kind of pleasure in this world, that is not an appropriate behavior. And so kari lechota. So we see that even though in our Gemara we focus on Rebbe Lazar HaKapar saying the fact that the person is a sinner because maybe if he became tamei, we actually in the end, in the discussion elsewhere in the Gemara, we say that no, he's a sinner even if he does not become tamei, because he refrained from himself from wine. Well, in that case, why doesn't our question still hold? Meaning, even if the person is a sinner, how could you call that something na'eh? That maybe the answer is that actually, even though we hold like Rabbi Lazar, it's only a little bit of a sinner. That in fact, when a person is tahor as a Nazir, so then it is possible that in fact the person can be the act of becoming a Nazir has a sinful component, namely the fact that the person is choosing to refrain permanently or for a period of time from enjoyment of this world. And so but the fact that they're being a Nazir is a sufficient mitzvah that it overcomes that little bit of sin. And so as a result, because the mitzvah component of it is greater than the sin component, so then therefore we can still call it na'eh, kari le'noam. Midi dahava mis'ana, and this is similar to a situation of the following: mis'ana tanis cholom b'Shabbos. If a person has a bad dream on Friday night and decides that it's a sufficiently disturbing dream that they need to fast in order to pray that everything be okay, you can actually have the fast on Shabbos. To yesh lo mitzvah libatel chalom, and because he has an actual commandment to nullify that dream. V'kitzad aveira asa, but at the same time, we learn that he's done a little bit of an avera. He's done something that's wrong. And so this is from a Gemara in Brachot. And we say, and as a Shahatana, the Shabbat, because he fasted on Shabbos. Shahareit Sarich Leishev B'tanis L'macharat Shabbos, that it's sufficiently bad that the person needs to do a makeup fast the next day on Sunday. L'chaper al shahitana b'Shabbos, in order to do kapara, in order to bring atonement for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos. So what's the point? The point is that often the world is gray, and that there is no absolute right answer, and we are balancing good and bad at the same time, and we have to work and do our best to come up with the right balance. Aval Nazir tamei rachmana karechota. But when it comes to a Nazir who actually becomes tamei, well, then we can point out that the Torah itself will call the person a sinner. Lefisha who soter as Nizrut, because he has to restart his entire Nizirut. V'tzarach lachzor l'Niziro so, and he has to begin it all over again. V'chabed be'anav, and it'll be difficult in his eyes. V'hamaseh, what happened? V'toa ala rishonos, and he can either regret or make a mistake in connection with the beginning. And so as a result, that's why that's considered sufficiently a sin. And so as a result, we end up with two situations. We can call na'eh a tahor Nazir, even though there's a little bit of a sin associated with it. But with respect to a Nazir who becomes tameh, we would not necessarily call that na'eh. Okay, so that's the discussion of Ehenaeh. And so we move now on to the rest of our the four other cases from our Mishnah about which there's no dispute. And so we'll go through each of them, and then we'll be able to talk about the machlokas in our Mishnah. So hareini chazeh, if I say that I'm going to be like this, okay? So nehinami de tafos besaro. Even if we say that the person is holding on to the guy's hair, right? That's the second of the two Ehenaeh cases. So the immediately preceding case in our Mishnah was a grabbing the hair case. So let's say that the guy's grabbing the person's hair and he says, I want to be like this. Well, hareini chazel lo amar. If he says, I want to be like this, he hasn't said anything. He hasn't said anything clear, right? Because what is he saying? I want to be like hair? That doesn't tell you what he wants to be. So Amar Shmuel, no, you're being too specific. Kagon shahaya Nazir over lefanav. He's talking about a situation where the Nazir is passing in front of him. And so the point is we're not talking about holding on to the hair. We're just talking about a Nazir passing in front. And in that situation, especially if the person says that this is what I mean, so then we're going to say that it's clear enough that the person is going to be a Nazir. Okay, so that's case number one. Case number two, hareini misalsel. What is so I am hereby misalsel. So mimai the hadin silsul sara. How do I know that silsul, some kind of curling of the hair, is referring to nazirut? That the maidservant of Rebbe would say lahahu gabra to this particular guy, ad masai atam misalsel b'sharecha. Until how long are you going to let your hair curl? And so as a result, we see that misalsel is a hair-based comment. And so it's clear when a person says that they're referring to their hair, hareini misalsel, that I'm going to curl my hair, meaning that I'm going to, on some level, grow my hair long. So then that's going to be what it means. Well, Ema Torah. Well, what about the Torah? The Torah is also referred to in connection with misalsel. Diksiv salsaleha usramameka, that it says in Mishlei that you should that in that context, the curling, it means sort of like to go through it in detail, and it will uplift you, and it's referring to the Torah. And so as a result, how do you know that when a person says hareini misalsel, he's not making a commitment about Torah? So Amar Shmuel, hakinami shetafas besaro. We're talking about a situation where the guy's holding the hair. And so as a result, it's clear that when he says hareini misalsel, I want my hair to be curled, it means that I want my hair to be curled like the Nazir whose hair I'm holding right now. So hareini mechalkel. What about mechalkel? Which is some kind of we'll see that there are various meanings to it, like to grow or to enhance. So mimaida hadin kilkul sarohu. How do I know that this is also a reference to hair? Look, well, we have a Mishnah. Sid Rebbe Yehuda Omer. If you're talking about sid, this lime that is used as a thing to cause hair to fall out, so for hair removal. So Rebbe Yehuda Omer Kidei Lasud Kilkul, in order to take care of the kilkul of hair. So V'amarav Basida. So the Rav says that that's the hair on the temple. So and this Mishnah is in the context of how much do you need to carry of something in order to violate Shabbos. And so when it comes to sid, this lime product, you need to carry enough that it would help you remove the amount of hair on your temple. So ema mezan aniye, maybe it means to feed the poor. Kidiksi vayichalkel Yosef es aviv es echav, right? Yosef sustained his father and his brothers from a couple of parshios ago. So Amar Shmuel, hachanami shetafas besaro. Again, we can clarify this because we're talking about a situation where the person is holding the guy's hair. And so as a result, when you're holding the person's hair, then mechalkel will be clear that you're talking about wanting to be a Nazir. Okay, so that's case number 3. So case number 4, fourth and final case that wasn't a machlokas in our Mishnah. Harei alai l'shalech pera harei zen Nazir. If the person says, I want to, send out my hera, my which is defined here as tresses, but is clear, but is going to, we're going to see, is a reference to hair. So mimaida din shiluach ribuya hu. How do I know that shiluach means growing, right? Because of course shalach means to send. So there could be other kinds of meanings, diksiv. So we're going to prove that it means growing. Shlachayech hardes rimonim, that when it says in Shira Shirim that we're commenting about the beautiful growth of hair that the person has, that your growths of hair are like an orchard of pomegranates, meaning that it's growing beautifully. So, well, ema midi da'avu, right? Well, one second, maybe shalach again could mean send away, and therefore could mean a removal. That you send water upon the fields. So where the water is being sent away from the person, and so as a result, maybe we're talking about cutting the hair, not growing it long. Well, Tana, take the Tana of our Mishnah noted the following: pera yalif. Take a look at the word pera in other contexts, because ksiv hacha, because it says in this context, in connection with the Nazir, it says kadoshi ye gadel pera, right? In Bamidbar Parak Vav, pasuk Hey, it says that the person is going to grow his pera. So that's clearly a reference to hair. Uksiv hasam gabi kohen hedyot, and in Yechezkel, in connection with a discussion of regular kohanim, ufera lo yishaleku, that a kohen is not allowed to let his hair grow long. So clearly, pera lo yishaleku is saying not letting your hair grow. So as a result, we know pera means hair from the context of the Nazir. Pera, now we can use that word pera in connection with the kohen in Yechezkel, and there it uses the word shalach. Shalach, and in that context, it's clearly when you have shalach in the connection with pera, it's talking about growing, not cutting. And so, as a result, we see that in fact that when we say harei alai l'shalach pera, so that means that we're going to try and become a Nazir. We're trying to say we're going to grow our hair. Well, one second, we can also give another analysis, because why were we uncertain about what shiluach meant? Because we were worried about this pasuk in Eov, where we say V'sholeach mayim al pnei chutzos, that the Hashem is the one who sends water upon the fields. Well, maybe sholeach mayim in that case also can mean growth. Nami riboy, maybe it also means growth. And how does it mean that? So we'll skip the next couple of words, which are in parentheses. De chad mashkin le maya lefeira v'rave, that when people water fruit trees, when they water the fruit trees, what's going to happen? They grow. So when we say the pasuk, when the pasuk says shalachayech pardes rimonim, I'm sorry, that wrong pasuk. But when the pasuk says v'sholeach mayim al panei chutzos, what it means is v'sholeach, and things will grow as a result of mayim al panei chutzos, as a result of the water on the fields. Okay, so the bottom line is that we've shown in each of these cases how it could mean it. The first cases all involve the first case involves again a Nazir passing in front of them. The next two cases of Misalsel and Machalkel involve holding the hair, and then the final case, it's clear that the person is intending their growth to refer to hair, and so as a result, you don't even need a Nazir, it seems like, to pass in front of you in this last case. All you need is to say it and have the right intention, and you will become a Nazir. All right. Harei Allah, maybe even if you don't have the right intention, maybe as long as you don't specifically not intend to be a Nazir, so then you would probably become a Nazir. All right, so now we come to the case of our machlokus in the Mishnah, the disagreement between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. So in our Mishnah, we said, Hareya, what? We're going to see. Let's see. Probably the Chachamim are going to win it, because the Chachamim usually win when they argue with Rabbi Meir. So Hareya light Siporim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir Omer Nazir. So again, if you say that I have an obligation of birds on me, so Rabbi Meir says that he's going to be a Nazir, and the Chachamim say no, he's not going to be a Nazir. So what's the machlokus about? So why time the Rabbi Meir? What's the reasoning of Rabbi Meir? So Reish Lakish. So we're going to have Reish Lakish, two answers: Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. So Reish Lakish is going to say, Reish Lakish, Siporin Samuchin L'Seira Kibil Alav, that the idea of birds and Nazir and hair rather are two topics that are written near one another in Tanakh, as we have it as the following example. Diksiv, and this is from Daniel, Adisare Kenishrin Rava V'tifrohi Ketziparin, that the person's hair is growing like eagles and his nails like birds. So the point is that he's growing, presumably like the feathers of eagles, and the nails like the claws of birds, meaning that the person's got great hair and great nails. So Rabbi Meir Savar Maspis Inish B'midi Desamichle. So what's going on is Rabbi Meir thinks that, according to Reish Lakish, that if you use words that are near one another in Tanakh and you have the right intention, well, then we can understand what you mean. So if you say that you want to take on the obligation, take on an obligation of birds is written near hair, and so if your intention is look, what I just couldn't remember the name for hair, and so I remembered the fact that birds are mentioned near it in Tanakh, and so as a result, what I'm really saying is I want to grow my hair like a Nazir, and so as a result, I want to become a Nazir, and so Rabbi Meir says that's sufficient. Presumably you still would need the internal intention, meaning we would need to ask the person, what was your intention? And the person says, I wanted to become a Nazir, and so then that would be sufficient for the person to become a Nazir. And because of the juxtaposition of these ideas in the psukim, v'Rabbanan Savrei lo maspis inish b'midi desamachle, and the rabbis say no, people don't talk like that. That's not the way people make vows. And so as a result, even if the person says that that's what the person had in mind, we would say, sorry, that is not enough to become a Nazir. All right, so that is the understanding of the machlokas according to Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan Amar. And it's interesting. All right. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Duchuli Alma Lo Maspis. No, everybody agrees that you people don't talk like that. Ella Hainu Taima de Rabbi Meir. This is the reasoning of Rabbi Meir. That what he's saying is that I am going to be obligated in bringing a korban of birds, which is the korban which a Nazir who becomes Tameh has to bring. So while a Nazir who successfully makes it through his period of Nazirut without becoming Tameh does not offer bird sacrifices, he only offers an ola, a chatas, and a shlamim, but not out of birds. If a person becomes Tameh, there's a special bird sacrifice that he needs to make. So maybe the person is taking on his obligation to make that bird sacrifice as a Nazir if he becomes Tameh. So and Michtei, so 1 second. So that's the reason that of reasoning of Rabbi Meir. So Michtei Chayshinan Kamar. Well, 1 second. What did Rabbi Meir language did you just use for Rabbi Meir? You just said that Rabbi Meir is worried about the fact that maybe this is what happened. Well, maybe he means something else. Maybe he's just trying to accept upon himself a voluntary sacrifice of birds. So how do you know? Meaning Rabbi Meir needs a level of confidence associated with the comment of being a specific that the intention of the person is specifically the Nazir birds as opposed to some other kind of birds. And maybe he's talking about another voluntary offering of birds. Well, im kain harei alai kain mi baile. Well, that wouldn't have been what the person would say. The person would have said that I am taking upon myself an obligation of a nest, because when you take a voluntary obligation of birds, it always involves two birds, and so as a result, so therefore you would want to say nests to imply that as opposed to something else. Well, maybe he's actually saying that I'm willing to help somebody who's a mitzora and give the birds for a mitzora. And again, he's not actually becoming a Nazir. So the point is that we're creating reasonable alternatives for the person's intention. And even if the person were to tell us what he meant, that's not enough if it's not sufficiently clear from his words. So kagon shahaya nazir over lefanav. So as a result, we're going to say that it must be where a nazir is passing in front of him. And so as a result, now we have enough of his words to say, okay, he probably means that. And so as a result, if he confirms it with what he's saying, so then that will be sufficient. The Dilma Nazir Tame Lepotro min Karbanasav Kamar. Well, maybe the person's intention is not to actually become a Nazir themselves, but rather they want to be a nice person. And this Nazir who's passing in front of them, maybe he's Tameh, and maybe he's saying, I'm willing to offer the bird sacrifice. I'm going to give him the bird sacrifice for his Tameh offering. So Kagon Shahaya Nazir Tahor over Lefanav. So we'll say that it must be that it was a Nazir that was Tahor who passed in front of him. So okay, so now we've got the two-way machlokas. We have Reish Lakish, who says that Rabbi Meir is talking about a juxtaposition in the Torah, and you can use or Tanakh, and you can use juxtaposition to tell you the meaning of a neder, and in particular a neder about becoming a Nazir. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, we don't use juxtaposition in the Tanakh, but what we will do is you can even reference the korban that a Tameh Nazir would offer, and that will be sufficient if you have a Nazir a Tahar Nazir walking in front of you. So what's the difference? My Beinayu, what's the difference between these two? Give me a case where you can see the difference between these two viewpoints. So Ikeminayu Kagon de Amar Tziporan Hasamuchan Laseyar Alai. If a person says, I'm taking on the obligation of birds that are near hair. So the person doesn't just reference, doesn't make it ambiguous, the reference to birds, about the fact that he's referring to a juxtaposition in Tanakh, but he says it explicitly that he's making he's trying to pull up that juxtaposition. So Rabbi Yochanan, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, Afagafta Amar Hachi, even though he says this, in Nazir over Lefanav, if a Nazir is passing in front of him, well then that's going to be fine, because then the reference to birds in the context of a Nazir, we can understand that he means that in fact he wants to be a Nazir. But low. But if there's no Nazir passing in front, well then even if he tells us what he meant, we don't use the juxtaposition in Tanakh in order to give meaning to a vow. And so as a result, with no one in front of him, who knows what the guy meant? And so as a result, even if the person tells us what he meant, the words aren't sufficiently close to what he said or to what he had in mind, that in fact we'll say that the words equal what he said. And so therefore he'll have done nothing. But Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, so according to Reish Lakish, well then, Afal got to a Nazir over Lefanav, even if there's no Nazir passing in front of him, it's completely clear what the guy means. It's completely clear that the person means Tziporin hasamuchin l'seyar, that he's really trying to say, I want my hair to grow, and I want my hair to grow like a Nazir. So, okay, so now we've highlighted this difference between the two viewpoints. So now the problem is that, one second, we've got another context in which we see that smuchin, things that are juxtaposed to one another, that are close to one another in Tanakh, makes a difference. Mi ikalaman de amar lo matbis inish b'milsa de samichle. Listen, you, Rabbi Yochanan, said everybody agrees that juxtaposition doesn't matter, that nobody makes a vow about something where one thing is close to another. But we have a brisa that seems to suggest something different. V'hatanya ha'omer yamin harei shvua. That if you say yamin, if you say by my right hand, then that is an oath. Well, my time. Why is that considered an oath? Isn't it an oath? La mishum diksiv. Isn't it an oath because we've got a pasuk where we juxtapose right hand and shavua by yaram yamino usmolo el hashamayim, that a person lifted his right hand and his left hand to heaven. Vayishava b'chei haolam, and he swore by the one who lives forever, namely God. So isn't it clear that right hand and swearing go together only because they're in a pasuk together? And so as a result, don't we have to say that juxtaposition in connection with the vow is core and is key and is something that is accepted by everyone, because this is a brisa that has no one disagreeing with it? No, Amri Lo, you don't have to actually say that. Mishum diyamin gufei ikra shavua, that the right hand itself is called an oath in the Torah. Tanya, we have a brisa that says, Minayin la'omer yamin shehi shvua. How do I know that somebody who says the right hand is making an oath? Shneamar nishba Hashem bimino, that Hashem swore with God's right hand. So it was just the right hand alone that was an oath. So we see that right hand, by definition, is an oath. How about the left hand? How do I know that that's an oath? Well, Shneamar uzo, and the arm of strength. And again, uzo could be referencing an oath. But the key for us is yamino. So as a result, we've got a proof that the attempted effort to show that everybody must hold that juxtaposition matters with respect to oaths, with respect to nedarim and shvuot, it falls away. It does not work, because in fact, when it comes to yamin and small, it's actually they themselves, the word themselves has been used as an alternative to oath. And so as a result, there is no need for juxtaposition. It itself was used in that way. So therefore, it cannot be, therefore we don't have anything challenging Rabbi Yochanan's position. And so as a result, and of course, it seems to me, certainly Rabbi Yochanan's position makes a lot of sense in how we deal with it. But okay, so now let's take a look and see what the next Mishnah says.
Could I jump in?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Two things. One is, when I looked at this first, I was thinking, obviously you can make an adava, but then I actually reviewed Parshat Vayikra, and the word that is used there for a bird offering is oaf, not zippori.
Oaf, now interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I would think that if you used it and you had that right intention, you would be fine. Remember, my understanding of this, I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding is that in many of the cases that we're talking about, the person is going to confirm what his intention was with respect to the vow. So if the person actually says, no, I did not intend that, then you better be very clear. You need to have kind of the clarity of Hareini Nazir kind of clarity to know that the person is actually going to be a Nazir, notwithstanding what the person said. So there's a couple of different layers here. So that's why, so I think that in connection with the tzipor, remember that the person is saying, in my understanding, that the person believes that he made a Nazir vow.
Yeah.
So that's
Rather
part
than
of what's
an
going
adava
on.
vow. The other interesting thing is that the positions of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish are reversed in the Yerushalmi. The attribution.
Interesting. What I was going to say, and I didn't say it, but now you highlight. So often I feel like Reish Lakish makes the better argument, even though we usually paskin like Rabbi Yochanan.
Right.
So I was like surprised that in this particular case, I really feel like Rabbi Yochanan's got the better argument. So you're telling me that actually in Yerushalmi, it's back to the way I usually, what I think. So that's very interesting. That was what I was going to say, and then I decided not to say it. But all right, in any event, that's so funny. Okay, so All right, so now let's take a look at the Mishnah, and with that we'll conclude. Hareini Nazir min hachartzanim. So this is a Mishnah that's going to tell us about the partial Nazirut situation. Can you become a partial Nazir? So if the person says Hareini Nazir min hachartzanim, if a person says that I want to be a Nazir from grape seeds, meaning that that's the only piece of the Nazir I want to be. Umina gzagin. And if we take a quick look, we'll take a quick look at the Tosas 2 lines up from the very bottom, very short Tosas, one of the shortest Tosas you can find. Minach artzanim mina zigim, o katani kedemuchach b'gemara. It's clear, as we'll see in the Gemara, that this is an o, because the problem is that the word the vav, it can be either an and or an or. So here, the person is not saying I'm going to be a Nazir from grape seeds and from grape skins, but no, I'm going to be a Nazir from grape seeds, or I'm going to be a Nazir from grape skins. Oh, umin hatiglachas, or I'm going to be a Nazir from hair cutting. Umin hatuma, or I'm going to be a Nazir from tuma. Or in all of those cases, Harei Zen Nazir. In each case, the person is a total Nazir. Every aspect of Nazirus applies to him. Bottom line is that our Mishnah says that you cannot be a partial Nazir. Cannot be a partial Nazir. We're going to see tomorrow that there's a position in the Mishnah, that this position in the Mishnah is not universal. So, but for that, you're going to have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So,
question.
Please.
Did we get that in our secular court, raising of the right hand to be sworn in? Does it have its connection?
You know, I am not sure of the that I would guess that the answer is yes. I would guess that when we you know how in court how sometimes you see people who say raise your right hand and then you swear, that I wonder whether that is based on the point of Yoram Yamino Usmolo El Shamayim Vayishav B'Chayei Olam. That's your right hand, exactly. So when in court, people will be asked to raise the right hand to swear, and they'll put the left hand on the Bible. Well, they'll put the left hand on the Bible. Now, in Judaism, we advise not to swear. We should say that we affirm. But in any event, the point is that I would not be surprised if that, in fact, had a connection. Absolutely. All right. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to seeing everyone, God willing, tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Did you say this coffee?